then something sort of clicked for me and made me realize that Bitcoin is not just magic internet money, and it's got something truly amazing about it. And was, we spoke about that gut feeling that I had watching that Crusaders game. Sometimes I get that, and I always trust my gut. And that was sort of when I realized, I needed to reallocate a few things and actually dive into Bitcoin, and I did.
Hello, I am Codyellingham, and this is the Transformation of Value podcast. In this episode, I talk with Ollie Sapsford, a professional rugby football player from New Zealand, currently signed with the Super Rugby ACT Brumbies. We talk about how Ollie's rugby career started, his Bitcoin story, and the proof of work of professional sports. Now, if you would like to support my work and growing this show, please consider tipping some Bitcoin to the show's wallet. Otherwise, pass this episode on to a friend who you think may enjoy it. If you have any questions or feedback, please reach out. My emails are always open, hello@thetransformationofvalue.com. Otherwise, on to the show. But where are you at the moment, Ollie?
I'm in Canberra, ACT of Australia. So I've been over here this is my third year. We just finished out my third season coming over here. I came over here 3 years ago. I had a goal when I was young to play Super Rugby, and I was batting away in New Zealand for quite some time and just struggled to get to that next level and got an opportunity over here and sort of haven't looked back since I got over here, yeah.
Yeah, so you're playing for the Brumbies?
Yeah. I'm with the Brumbies at the moment. Me and my partner, Kylie, are here at the moment. And we've got our first baby on the way about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Congratulations, man.
Yeah, thank you.
It's all happening. I want to just zoom out a little bit, Ollie, and maybe just come back to your early life, your roots. I mean, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Ashburton, so I was born in Christchurch. I played rugby growing up as a kid there until I was about 8 or 9. I think my parents split up. We were in Christchurch for a little bit longer, and then my mother met her now husband down in mid-Canterbury, Ashburton, and us 3 kids moved down to Ashburton on the farm. He owns a farm down there, and we grew up in mid-Canterbury from about the age of 8 or 9, if I recall rightly.
Yeah. That's I got a lot of respect for the Canterbury region. I used to get down there a little bit. I was when I was back in New Zealand, we had the Bit Kiwi Christchurch meet up, and I was doing some other stuff down there as well, and something about the Canterbury Plains, it's kind of just beautiful, and it feels to me it's sort of the real New Zealand,
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. I love it down there, and every chance I get to go home, I just love it. We can see the Southern Alps from our farm, and just the snow on the mountains, and the crisp nights and crisp mornings and sunny days is what I enjoy. Obviously, there's a bit more wind down there now, but it's beautiful down there.
Yeah, and I guess you mentioned you were playing rugby from a young age, but when did your sports career begin?
Yeah, so my father loves rugby and still does, and me and my brother picked it up when we would have been 3 or 4 or 5 or something like that. I used to play for Waihora club down there, and we played right through. I think I played until I was about 16. Played a bit of rep stuff. And then I left school when I was 16 years old to pursue a building apprenticeship. I did a building apprenticeship in Ashburton. Did that for 4 years. Got qualified, and then actually went on an OE over to Europe. Did a few months in Europe, a couple months over in Perth on a farm working. And funny enough, the night before I flew out of Christchurch, me and some of my best mates went to a rugby game, the Crusaders, and it was actually versus the Brumbies. Funny enough, it's kind of funny how the world works like that. And I remember watching the game, and I was like, man, I never really gave rugby a crack, and I was always, not bad at it growing up as a kid, but I always loved it. And I stopped playing when I was 16 when I started building, and I was riding motocross for a bit. I used to race, so that sort of took up my weekends. But I remember watching that game and being like, damn, I'd love to be out there playing instead of watching. And then I went and did an OE. I went away for a year, worked on a farm in Perth for a few months, went to Europe with my brother and one of my best mates, and then went back to the farm for another few months. And when I got back, I was just ready to rip in. It was sort of worked in well with the club pre-season. They started in December. I got back, started December, and ripped into a pre-season and played a season of club down down in Ashburton for the mighty Southern Stags, and ended up going okay and playing for their Heartland team, Mid Canterbury Heartland after that. And that was sort of where I realised, I I sort of have a bit of talent here, and I've got a massive love and desire to play rugby professionally. And so sort of just got stuck in with that, and that led me to an opportunity in Wellington, at the academy up there. And did a couple of years in Wellington. Was trying to get a contract with the Wellington Lions, which is the Mitre 10 Cup team, but was just really on the fringe. I was sort of in and out training with them, but never picked up a full contract. And I was about to head back to Ashburton, when I got a phone call from Hawke's Bay.
Magpies.
And yeah, the Magpies.
Yeah.
And we had actually, so I was playing for the Wellington B team, and we went to Hawke's Bay, and we played a B game against there, and I had a good game, and the coaches were there watching me. And so, yeah, one thing led to another. And I got a phone call a few days later asking if I want to, go up there and give it a crack. And I still had that, I was still so keen to try and make it. And, the 2 years in Wellington were really tough because, I was playing some really good footy, but just wasn't quite enough to make it. It's only ever one coach's opinion on you. And so I said yes, and went up to Hawke's Bay, and never looked back. Just absolutely loved my time there. And I was there for 5 years. This is my first year not going back. But yeah, so that's sort of where that started.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I'm from Hawke's Bay actually. So
Oh wow, I
yeah, I played a little bit of rugby growing up, but I was always in the forwards, and I'm a bit too small to keep that up. And so around about the time I started high school, I let that go pretty quickly.
yeah.
Get broken by the first 15 or the fourth 15, didn't really matter. I was going to snap in half. So, but no, my brother played quite a bit. He did the Ross Shield and a few things like that.
Oh, wicked.
But it was part of growing up. I think it's most Kiwi boys grow up playing a bit of rugby or some kind of sport, whether it's cricket or football, whatever it is. It's kind of in our DNA to get out there and give it a go on a Saturday morning.
Absolutely. You don't really realize how ingrained in our DNA it is until you go overseas. And I did that trip over to Europe, and as soon as you meet someone and you'd say you're from New Zealand, they would straight away say something about the All Blacks or the haka or something like that. So you're right, it is engraved in us to grow up, and it's sort of a lot of, no, I wouldn't say all boys, but a lot of boys grow up, dreaming of playing for the All Blacks and doing the haka and whatnot.
Yeah, well, I think it's there's something about sports. No matter what it is, boys and girls doesn't matter. There's something about the proof of work of sports that I think you could appreciate, and I do want to talk a little bit about that today because I did a bit of swimming as well. I stopped doing rugby, but I was doing swimming for a long time, and we had the various national competitions and things, and it's an individual sport where you're kind of racing others, but you're really racing yourself, and I think that certainly played a big role for me. But for you with rugby and this moment where you were watching the Crusaders and the Brumbies play, that sounds like it was a bit of an epiphany that spoke out to you, that kind of encouraged you to pursue it a bit further. I'm keen to just talk about that a bit more. So like you were watching the game and you had sort of put rugby down, and that moment sort of came back and made you want to pick it up again.
Yeah, well, I'd grown up playing, and I was probably a bit bigger, younger, than a lot of the other boys around me. And so, rugby being a physical sport and size kind of helped me when I was younger. So, I grew up, and my dad always was like, son, you can go as far as you want in rugby and whatnot. And I used to dream of it when I was a younger kid, and then I sort of grew up and thought, that's not me. And probably I went to school in Ashburton at Ashburton College, and that my year, the last year I was their first year of playing first 15. So rugby wasn't really a big thing at Ashburton College. We all sort of played for our clubs there, and it was just a fun thing to do. But it was sort of a small town, and I don't know, I probably just never saw a pathway to professional rugby. And then, yeah, like you said, that that night when I was watching the Crusaders, it just ignited something deep down, and it was like I remember watching the game and just being so excited, um, and just thinking, man, I'd love to be out there. Honestly, I don't know what it was, and it's funny because I watched the Crusaders play the Brumbies, and I can't remember who won, but I'd grown up dreaming of playing for Canterbury and the Crusaders, and I never got an opportunity there, and then here I am playing I'm in my third year and at the Brumbies and absolutely loving it. So it's just, it's funny how things work like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the universe has its way. I mean, I've got many similar sort of experiences in my life that have led to where I am today, where I'm living. I'm over in Japan, and one thing leads to another. Getting out of little old Hawke's Bay and going around the world and seeing different things and meeting different people and all of this work I've done with Bitcoin and everything. It's sort of the path reveals itself, and I guess talking about that, then you've got this kind of sports career and this drive, it seems to me, to really push forward with that, and it seems you are doing that. But you're also interested in Bitcoin, Ollie. I mean, tell me a bit about your Bitcoin story, please.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what you'd call it, a typical, or it was more, my introduction to Bitcoin was more an introduction into crypto, into 2000 and, I think it was about May 2021, somewhere around there was when I first bought some crypto. And one of my best and maybe my worst traits is how fast I rip into things. I take a lot of action and sort of think about the consequences later. But I dove straight in and I learned a little bit, but didn't learn enough. Chucked a bit of money in and, watched it go down pretty quickly. But that's what got me into the market, May 2021. And I think it was about, in 2021, Bitcoin had those two peaks, and it was sort of about that first peak. And then I watched that money probably go down by 40%. But the best thing about it was it got me into the market, and it got me learning. And I sort of at that stage, it was that unit bias that I've spoken about before. And I saw Bitcoin, and then I saw Ethereum, and then I saw all these other coins, and I was like, oh, well, if these coins go to $1, I'll be a millionaire, and just that silly stuff. So I did that, and it went up to that second peak, and then it went all the way down. But luckily that got me into the market and got me learning. And after that, we started, that downward price action in 2022. I started learning more about Bitcoin, and I got introduced to Michael Saylor on YouTube, and then just spent hundreds and hundreds of hours learning.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it's crazy. I could just put his sort of content on it and just listen, and then I listened to the Bitcoin Standard, and it was that was really good, and there was bits in there that were really good, but some of it was a little bit complicated for me. And then in late 22, I think it was, March 2022, the rate hike started happening. And me and my partner Kylie, we've got a house in Mount Maunganui. It's now being a rental. We bought it for our first house, but since we moved over here, we've got people in it. And we ended up refixing the end of 2022 around November, and that was sort of that moment for me where I was going, what's going on here? Like our rates, our interest rates at the bank have just doubled. My home repayments have just doubled. And I don't really understand why. And that was sort of when I flipped from, what is Bitcoin to what is money? And I went down the what is money route. And I wanted to find out what was the fundamental reason for my interest rates going up and so quickly. And that's probably, one of my favorite parts about Bitcoin, is that it gets people learning about what money is, what interest rates are, what inflation is, gets you sort of learning about the whole system. And so, yeah, I got into that. And, once I had gone down the rabbit hole and the central banks and the Reserve Bank and whatnot, just sort of learning a little bit, pretty basic knowledge of it, but learning a bit about it. Then something sort of clicked for me and made me realize that Bitcoin is not just magic internet money, and it's got something truly amazing about it. And was, we spoke about that gut feeling that I had watching that Crusaders game. Sometimes I get that, and I always trust my gut. And that was sort of when I realized, I needed to reallocate a few things and actually dive into Bitcoin, and I did. And I was, I was quite lucky that whole 2022. I'd sort of been learning what Bitcoin was. And then when the interest rate hikes happened, a few things sort of clicked to me when I was learning about what money is, and then it sort of just all gelled together. And yeah, so that was sort of for that was sort of for to me. And then I started buying Bitcoin down near the bottom, and then that whole FTX saga happened, and that really tested my conviction, I suppose you'd call it. For me, I'd bought at the pretty much the Pico top, so the whole time I'd been buying Bitcoin, and it had been going down in value. So it really tested that conviction, but something about spending hundreds and hundreds of hours in front of YouTube listening to Michael Saylor and just certain people going on Twitter and learning, I felt like it was right. And I'm not going to say it's paid off, but I feel a lot more confident about that position now than I probably did 12 months ago.
Yeah, that's awesome, and thank you for sharing that, because it's sort of, you're committing to your gut feeling, and you've got an idea and a logic behind it, which kind of, I think maybe a lot of people are quite reactive to things, and they just sort of flit around ideas. But once you've got a conviction for what it needs to be, you can kind of just power through it and make it happen. And you've demonstrated that with your sports career, where you sort of you trusted your gut, and then you went for it, and you were able to make it happen. And in a sense, I think Bitcoin's it's a bit similar, right? You learn about it, you understand the mechanism of money, of how the world is working, and you can see this pathway. And there's ups and downs along the way, but ultimately it leads to this realization that this is a revolutionary technology. It changes everything. It's quite a big idea.
Yeah, it is. It is a big idea. It's interesting. I've never really put the two and two together. That gut feeling I had at watching that rugby game, and then when interest rates were going through the roof and our mortgage repayments doubled, and it was quite a similar moment for me.
Yeah.
Now I'm actually reflecting on it. Yeah.
Well, there's a certain complexity to the legacy financial system that hides a lot of its workings, right? And it is complex. I must admit, man, I really suck with that sort of stuff. Like in my 20s, I was living on the edge. I went broke, because I just didn't understand money. I didn't understand how to play their game, and that wasn't because I was, inferior or anything like that. It's just that it wasn't my thing. I'm not really a numbers guy. I'm more of a creative person, right? And I like getting out there and doing stuff as well. And with Bitcoin, it's just so simple. It's like all of the bullshit just sort of melts away, and it makes all the difference in the world. And I think there's something I've noticed where people who are closer to the land, people like farmers or sports people who get out and do stuff, they just have this ability to kind of understand Bitcoin so much better than people who are maybe financial people, or kind of they're more technical in the machine. Is that something you've come across at all?
Yeah, I think it would. There's my Bitcoin group would be quite small. It's sort of why I started a Twitter account, and I wanted to meet more people in the industry, and just connect with people, because you learn so much. And like this conversation right now, I would have connected with you if I had not been on Twitter. And so it's really awesome to be doing that. There's a few in rugby that I have, that I'm close with that are in Bitcoin, but not many. I think a lot got nailed in that 2021 craze of crypto and altcoins, and just got absolutely smashed. And they sort of, unfortunately, they left and never really looked at the actual value of what Bitcoin is, which is a real shame. I was lucky. I don't know if it's because I'm dumb or what kept me around, but I was lucky that it led me to Bitcoin and really, spending hundreds of hours learning about it, and getting confident in it. But like I said, my stepdad's a farmer, and I consider my mum a farmer now. She's been on the farm for 20 odd years. And they don't understand it, and it's real. Yeah, they don't understand it at all. And I mean, they're probably a bit old school. They'll hold a lot more cash. And I don't know if, I've tried to sort of talk to them about inflation and how it's sort of eroding their wealth. But yeah, I don't know. There's still this big, Bitcoin is a scam sort of concept going around, which is funny because I always say to people, I've never met anyone that has spent more than 100 hours learning about what Bitcoin is that has come out and said, I don't want to borrow it. Everyone
Yeah.
that's done the work, even one podcast, learn about it. And, I consider it a store of value, a digital gold, really. I haven't I don't spend it. I haven't really looked into the transaction proposition as such. But yeah, for me, that's, I've really struggled to orange pill my parents.
It's hard. It could be a generational thing. I've talked to
Mm.
I've talked to older relatives, to my family about it, and I think they are still maybe in a more physical kind of mindset where it's about assets, and this is a New Zealand thing as well, where secondhand cars and like trucks and chainsaws and things like that, especially where I grew up, those were how you held value, and obviously housing as well. But they for me, that actually reflects the financialization of everything and kind of the export of our banking system to Australia, etc. There's kind of a physical day-to-day reality in New Zealand where rural people, they monetize chainsaws and firewood and stuff like that, kind of arbitrage as well, and contra deals. I'll drop off some firewood, you give me some venison, these kinds of things. Like, there's a lot of that.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of that in New Zealand, and to throw
Yep.
Bitcoin digital stuff in there, I think it can confuse people who are maybe not computer savvy, or they're not sort of interested as much.
Yeah, for sure.
But then when you go to the cities, I think there is maybe a bit more of an awareness of like shares and the stock market and how you can play with it. But it's all of it's a gamble.
Yeah, I agree. I think since cost of living has gone up, like I was saying, interest rates going up, I think that's made a lot of people a lot more aware and started thinking outside the box of just saving, and started thinking about shares, maybe thinking about property a little bit. But I don't know, I was thinking about it the other day, and I've still got mates that are still heavily in crypto but don't want to borrow Bitcoin, and it's sort of like, because inflation's, it's probably a bit higher than they lead on to be. But it's been relatively high, especially these last few years. Like, there's a real people, really trying to outperform inflation. And, if the S&P's, doing 7% or something like that, even that's might not be, outperforming inflation. And so it's sort of, it's a scary, I don't really know the answer to it, but, that's sort of my thinking around why people, they're trying to beat inflation, trying to go these high return, easy money.
Yeah, well, they're looking for a way to get ahead. And the
That's
old
what I
way,
was trying to say.
yeah, well, the old way isn't working either, and wages are low. I mean, certainly you're over in Australia. I mean, you could probably attest to just the situation in New Zealand versus Australia. I mean, I often kind of critique that New Zealand is decades behind the living standards of Australia, and it's got its own problems over there, but. Because people don't get out of the island of New Zealand very much, they don't see that actually things are pretty shit sometimes. You've got roads that aren't working, and hospitals that aren't working. It's kind of, I don't know, we put up with it.
Yeah, I think we do. I'm really optimistic, and I love New Zealand, and I'm super proud to be a Kiwi. And growing up there, and I'll return one day once this footy dream runs out. But like you said, council rates and stuff are going up, and it's just crazy. And you don't really see it reflected in the likes of the things you're talking about, like the roads, and it sort of makes you wonder what's going on up top, and where that money's being spent.
Yeah. I mean, I agree in the sense that I'm also quite optimistic, and I think we should talk about this in a minute, this kind of idea of hope. But with New Zealand in particular, I do think there's an opportunity where the kind of rugged practicality of Kiwis to just get shit done, and that, I think that's actually going to play a role here when the time is right. And obviously, as you know, I'm involved with a lot of things in Bitcoin, and I don't think we're that far away from higher level understandings of Bitcoin in New Zealand. Like, I think in bigger countries or more kind of bureaucratic countries, it would be harder to kind of get it through. But man, New Zealand, I had Don Brash on the other day, we just need to chat to a few of these people, business leaders, people like yourself, and get the word out there. Bitcoin is the answer to all of these issues. And then it happens, it's easy peasy.
No, I totally agree. And it's something, that's sort of why I turn to Twitter a lot, and I'd love to find out how people spread the word on Bitcoin and how they, orange pill their friends and others, because that's
that's why I put the word out, because I did an episode a couple of months ago, and we asked the question like, who's New Zealand's Bitcoin sports hero, and a few people were like, oh, you should check this guy Ollie out. And I mean, what would it take when you look at, my era growing up, it was, Richie McCaw, he was the most trusted man in New Zealand, right? And he's a Canterbury boy. And I think, man, what if someone from that ilk, or even a current All Black would come out and say, yeah, Bitcoin, this is what it means. That's a trusted voice. What could that do? I mean, I know you're working your way up towards the dream as well, but like, what could that mean for people saying, shit, I should give this thing a go?
Yeah, I think it would be huge. And, I know a couple of All Blacks that are in it. But like I was saying, how my parents still sort of have that scam orientated Bitcoin mentality. There's probably a little bit of that reputation risk they're worried about, and there's
they wouldn't want to say it. Yeah,
wouldn't want to say it. And then if you're not 100% convicted yourself, you can't sort of spread the word, and you can't sort of tell people about it. And it's not until you've got that conviction yourself, you'll be prepared to sort of not put your reputation on the line, but it is a little bit. I think that's probably what people are worried about, and that's what's holding Kiwis back. Because if someone was like that to go out and say something about Bitcoin, and then 2 days later the price dropped by $10,000, you could imagine how many people would be on his case and in his Instagram DMs calling him an idiot and scam and stuff like that. So that's sort of what I would think.
Yeah, and I think there's the cycles, right? And so a lot of people maybe got in on the 21 cycle, and they sort of maybe got their feet burned or whatever, they got burnt by that. And now maybe we're coming into a new cycle. Who knows even what's going to happen? But I think just having more and more conversations, because back then there was very little in New Zealand that anyone was talking about. This podcast, everything I've been doing came after that. And so I think there's more and more awareness that this is a topic that's worth exploring. But for sure. Something I wanted to come back to, Ollie, so this idea of hope, which I must say, man, like I certainly appreciate that story of how you decided you wanted to get into professional rugby. For me, that really is similar to how I ended up getting out of Hastings, because I've told this story before, but I was stuck fucking vacuuming office buildings. I was broke, living with a friend. I didn't know what to do with my life, and I had this little epiphany when I was vacuuming this Smith & Smith auto glass on Karamu Road, Hastings, and it was like, man, get your ass to Japan. It was a bit like, have you ever seen Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger? And he's like, get your ass to Mars. I don't know if
I haven't, sorry.
It was a bit like that, man. It was like this little voice, and I pulled my shit together and got a scholarship, went down to uni, studied, did all the things I needed to do, but it was like listening to that gut feeling that was like, man, that you need to get out of here, you need to go. And it's kind of, you might be familiar with like the hero's journey. Is that something you've come across?
I haven't, sorry.
No, that's right. It's like, it's this kind of concept that permeates all kind of literature and films and stuff. And it's this idea, kind of like if you've seen Lord of the Rings, you got like the Shire, whether it's Hastings or Ashburton or whatever, but it's kind of the safe place. But then you get the calling to go and leave the Shire and do the big thing, right? And to go to the mountain, and you do the thing at the mountain. The Lord of the Rings, or whatever it is, you play for the Brumbies, you go to the top of the career ladder, you do what you need to do, and then you're able to come back and then share that with the next generation and kind of help them see the calling. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of in a roundabout way, there's a lot more to it, but that's kind of this idea of the hero's journey, right? And you come back a different man. And I think there's something about Bitcoin which it gives you this kind of hopeful kind of optimism for the future, where you don't have to just put your head in the sand. You don't have to just kind of ignore that gut feeling. You know that this is the right thing to do, without being too righteous about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you can go and come back, and you can bring that back with you, and you can show the way, and you say, look, you can follow your dreams, right? And you've demonstrated that with your sports career, like you can follow your dreams. It didn't matter if you took a break or you were, you hadn't been doing it for a few years. You can get back into it, and you can follow the dream, and because you've got that vision, you know what I mean? You can sort of take it with you. Yeah. So I don't
Absolutely.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I mean, any advice I'd give to, if 18 or 17 or 20-year-olds asking me for advice, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be get out of your hometown. Just even if it's a couple of hours away, just get out and go and meet new people and just get out of your comfort zone, because it sends you to another level. You can't just move back in home if you don't have any money, or it just gives you that little boost you need to just go, right, I've got to get my shit in order here and really have a crack.
Yeah, man. I remember thinking, like, when I was in Hastings, I remember thinking Wellington was like the biggest city in the world, man. I was like, man, there's like skyscrapers and there's like, you know what I mean? Like, honestly, I was like, I was like in my early 20s or late teens, and now I look back and I'm like, man, I was just in like Hong Kong the other month, and that's like millions of people, and just insanity. And you've traveled, you know what it's like, but there's like this whole world out there. And I think that's part of the thing with New Zealand, because we're at the bottom of the world, and it takes like hours, like you got to get on a plane to go anywhere. We often sort of, a lot of people maybe get stuck. There's this kind of gravity that keeps people stuck in their hometown or in New Zealand generally. But the flip side of that is there's this introspection and this kind of, I don't know, you call it kind of heart, that is why one of the reasons why I'm quite optimistic about Bitcoin and the future of New Zealand is that we can sort it out. There's this kind of self-honesty, kind of humble honesty, I guess you could say. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'll totally agree. I mean, it's just like, it goes back to that All Blacks thing that sort of makes me think about the All Blacks and being right down the bottom of earth, being one of the smallest countries, and then we go overseas and we beat some of the best teams, and we've done it for years on end, and that's hope. That we're such a small country. We come to Australia and go to South Africa. I mean, we lost in the weekend, but New Zealand's always punches above its own weight. Is what that makes me think of.
Well, any kind of pursuit, really, even like whether it's business or other sports, other codes. I mean, we've got certainly enough, talented people who are sort of going out into the world. But I think there is something about that which is worth exploring, and kind of also the character building of overcoming difficulties and setbacks, right? Because I see, have you got like broken your arm or something? You've got like
I snapped my thumb 6 or 7 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I mean these things happen with sports, right? And just with general life, right? And you got to bounce back from the physical injuries and stuff in playing sports, as you know, but there's also just kind of the mental challenges of like, Bitcoin. It's like, the price is tanking, what are we going to do? And it requires like a mixture of like perseverance, but also like cool clarity. Like, are you, because, I wouldn't want to be riding a crypto down, while it's sinking, but, with Bitcoin, it's a different story. So, I mean, how do you characterize that sort of overcoming difficulty, overcoming challenges with maybe your sports and Bitcoin?
Well, with Bitcoin, because when I first got into it, I would look at the price far too often, and I'd be so worried about the price. I mean, really, it just doesn't matter, because for me, it's a 20+ year bet. That's sort of how I look at it. And I just look at when I buy Bitcoin, I look at how much I'm buying Bitcoin and how much Bitcoin I've just bought. And so I just look, all I'm worried about is the term, like the amount of Bitcoin I own. That's all I'm worried about. And the US dollar value of it is irrelevant for me, because I'm not planning to sell it, and I don't want to sell it anytime short term. But it is tough, because you do every now and then I'll have a look at the chart, and someone on Twitter will post a chart, and there's always them doom and gloom boomers, but the uncertainty is probably more what I'm sort of thinking about at the moment, and markets don't really like uncertainty. And I think that's sort of why we've been going sideways, and it's gone down a little bit, but in the scheme of Bitcoin, it's not that much at the moment. And I don't know if it's sort of all waiting for the US election to sort of pan out.
Mm.
Um, that's probably what's going on at the moment. But yeah, for Bitcoin, I just purely look at the amount of Bitcoin I got, and every month or whenever it is, I just want that number to go up, and even if that US dollar value goes down, I'm not that worried about it.
Yeah. Are you listening to any audiobooks or reading anything at the moment about Bitcoin?
Uh, I've just downloaded. I haven't started listening to it. The Fourth Turning. Have you
Oh,
read that?
yes, yes, I have.
Is it good?
It's good. It's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've just started. I watched the podcast the other day of what's the guy's name?
On my one.
Of no, nah, sorry, the on the Fourth Turning, the guy that
Oh,
wrote the Fourth
I
Turning.
don't know the guy. I don't know the author's name.
Yeah, sorry, I can't remember his name, but I watched a podcast with him on it the other day, and he was talking about he. Oh, I can't remember what they were, but he sort of had these five predictions in 1997, and four out of five of them have come true so far. He
Yeah.
sort of predicted the pandemic and stuff like that, and so that sort of made me quite interested. And so
There's
yeah,
a
I'm going to dive into that.
The Fourth Turning is really good. There's actually another book that kind of goes alongside it, which is The Sovereign Individual. Have you
Oh
come
yeah,
across that? Yeah, so
I've heard of that, but I haven't read it. No.
it's a pretty heavy going book. Like it's, I've been listening to the audiobook again, and reading it is a pretty thick book. But that came out around about the same time, and that also predicted like everything that's happened. Like,
Is that right?
yeah, talking about like word for word, like basically Bitcoin, like the kind of remote work culture, the disintegration of nation states, etc. And yeah, I would say those two are like a good set to go together. Certainly
Right.
heavy going, but I think you'll just be like, wow, this is like so prophetic the way it just outlines exactly what's happening. Like,
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
if I know, yeah, if you're interested. But
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
the
For
Fourth
sure.
Turning is good stuff though.
Yeah. 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 I'll have a look at it. I was worried. I think the fifth one was maybe something to do with a civil war or nation states pulling out of the government or something like that. But
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, it doesn't get to
yeah.
anything
Yeah.
violent. But
Sure.
yeah, man. I mean, it's awesome stuff. And look, I think I've really enjoyed talking to you, Ollie, just about this idea of kind of like following your dreams as well, because
Mm.
there's something kind of about the fiat world where it's like, oh, you got to work, you got to give up on your dream to make some money
Mm.
so that you can afford to even live. And that's so destructive, because what if you want to take a shot? You want to take a shot at professional rugby or doing whatever it is that someone wants to do. And then you always get the naysayers. You get people say, oh, you can't do that. You got to put your head down and get a job and all of this stuff, which for me, it's very much a fiat mindset, right? But you've proven with what you've done, in your career to get through the ranks of provincial rugby in New Zealand. Now you're playing Super Rugby with the Brumbies, and who knows what's next.
Yeah.
But I was reading an article because you've just signed on for another year with the Brumbies, right?
Yeah. I just signed 2 more years. So
2 more years, yep.
yeah, 25 and 26.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, awesome. So that's going to be pretty awesome, man. I don't follow it super closely, but what's the season like? Is it like we're in September at the moment? Like, do you have games coming up, or what's sort of the?
No, so we're in a bit of a lull at the moment. We pick up pre-season officially starts in November. So the
I see.
start the first week in November. That goes right through till the end of January, and then February the season starts. So the season's from February till late June. And then normally in this time I go back to New Zealand and play Mitre 10, but a few things went on and the thumb's no good. So
Yeah.
I'm just chilling here, rehabbing and getting my body right. And it's the first time I've actually had a bit of a break
Yeah.
and sort of been able to get away from rugby. So it's actually been really nice just to sort of mentally refresh and physically as well. And, just spend some good time with my partner,
Yeah.
Kylie, and yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And do you get, and outside of rugby training and that, do you do anything else, like in terms of other activities, other things you're into?
I love golf. So when my thumb's not working, I'll get back into golf. But Like I was saying earlier, we're about to have our first baby. We got a baby girl due in 3 weeks, so I think that's going to take up a bit of my time,
Oh man.
which I'm looking forward to. So golf might get a bit of a back burner for a while,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're just both me and Kylie are really excited for that
Oh
phase of
man.
our life.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Really, really, really great stuff, and congratulations and good luck with that. It's
Yeah,
a
thanks.
journey of its own. I did a little bit of golf as well when I was a kid back out Waiheke. I don't know if you ever got out there in Napier. There's
Yeah, yeah,
the course out
yeah,
the back there, but
yeah.
haven't done it for some years now, I must say. But no, that's awesome, Ollie. And look, man, I do appreciate you sharing your story and yeah, your sports story and how you got into Bitcoin. I think it's inspiring. I think there's a lot of young people out there who are maybe thinking about stuff like this, about money, about the future, about what they want to do, and they may be looking for people who they can get a bit of direction from. Not just traders or any of these kinds of people, but people who are doing the proof of work like you are.
Yeah, for sure. Just real life people like me and yourself. And thanks very much for all the work you do. I think education is a massive part of it. And the lack of education is also a massive part of it. So yeah, thanks for all the time you're putting into your podcast. Appreciate it.
No, all good, man. Sweet. Well, we might wrap it up there. Is there anywhere you want to send people if they want to like follow your sports stuff or anything? You said you're on Twitter.
Yeah, people can find me on Instagram or Twitter, just my name, Ollie Sapsford. If anyone wants to connect, especially if there's any Bitcoiners out there as well that want to connect, that'd be wicked.
Yeah, sweet, man. All right. Thank you very much.
Nah, easy. Thanks very much, man.
Thank you for listening. I do hope you enjoyed the show. I am codyellingham, and that was the transformation of value. If you would like to get in touch, please send me an email at hello@thetransformationofvalue.com, and I will get back to you.